It's going to be a big shock.
The best dressed.
Run, fight, kill it, eat it, whatever. When we
Like, wow.
Yeah.
Infinite source of information.
50 grand to win that business.
Cheeky and...
You're not going to win.
Like, wow. Hello everyone and welcome to the PartyMaker Show, and today we have the one and only Kevin Jackson, the most influential person in the event industry, voted for a lot of consecutive times and also arguably one of the best dressed men in the industry. Kevin, hello.
Hey Stas.
Very excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. So yeah, guys, we're gonna start with brief introduction so you can tell us about yourself, your journey in the event industry.
Well, I started in advertising a long time ago. And funny enough, I was at an event and the speaker quoted something from a guy called Marshall McLuhan. He was a professor and a media guru. You should look him up, Marshall McLuhan, Canadian. And he said, we don't learn through education, we learn through experience. We experience more than we will ever understand. And with that, I decided to join the event industry and joined an amazing organisation called Jack Morton. And then went from Jack Morton to George P. Johnson. I think I did 5-6 years at each. And then I started my own agency called The Experience is the Marketing. And now we run 3 or 4 big events. Muslim Lifestyle Show, Halal Food Festival, the Eid Festival. And we're just about to deliver an event for my other company called Blueprints, the World Indigenous Forum, which is going to be at Excel in November.
Cool, so tell us maybe a bit more about your early years. You said you started at Jack Morton.
Yeah.
And so your journey from Jack Morton to JPJ and what was happening back then?
Well, I'd already been in advertising and marketing for, 10 or 12 years by then. So I went into Jack Morton as business development director, I think, and we did 5 years pitching, winning, pitching, winning, pitching, losing, pitching, winning. So it was about building business for Jack Morton back then across Europe.
And what was your role there?
I led all those pitches, find the client, develop the client, and then go and pitch the business. And then I was headhunted into George P. Johnson and did virtually the same as I don't know what I was, vice president or senior vice president, and helped drive that business forward.
So these are one of the 2 top agencies.
Yeah, the 2 top, I would say.
Okay.
Certainly on my CV, they've become the top. So.
Right. So what would you say were the differences between 2?
They're both amazing, and it's incredible how similar they are in some ways, but very different in other ways. GPJ was much bigger than Jack Morton, 4 times the size. Jack Morton was back then, probably still is, a highly creatively driven agency, and that was they won work on their creativity. Now they've developed a whole insight team, so brand insight, creative development. GPJ was more programmatic because they had a big exhibition heritage. They did massive motor shows around the world. They had a very programmatic view of events, and almost in the way that advertising used to work, where in advertising the creative were developed in London or New York and then went around the world. That's what GPJ did for its global clients, developed an idea and then made sure it was consistent throughout the world. It was a great company, amazing delivery.
What was your favorite event or favorite client to work with?
Favorite client and favorite event are the same thing. Cisco Live. Gert de Broekers just posted on LinkedIn actually recently. I can't remember what it is. It's 15 years of Cisco Live, which is an amazing event. And for those that have an opportunity to go and see it. It's so brilliantly targeted at the audience. So how long ago was I there? So I've been gone 5 years. So it's 10 years ago since I was at GPJ. But in terms of understanding the audience needs, developing audience insights so that the event actually tracks what the audience needs, not just what the brand's trying to deliver. For me, it was such a clever, evolving event because every year there was a new iteration. It didn't just do the same thing every year. It worked out what was best, and the design work was amazing. The online work is amazing. It's just a very clever event. In fact, funnily enough, the event I'm doing in November, World Indigenous Forum, I've sort of modelled on Cisco Live because it's so clever at getting to the heart of the audience and making sure the audience understands the messages and can do something with it.
What were your thoughts on some practical tips which you did for this event, which actually delivered this result?
Well, it's the way the message is disseminated. You know, if you take any large event, a main plenary with thousands of people in, not everyone is able to see it at that time. And what Cisco did was make sure that it's filmed live, and you could go to viewing spots around the venue that you didn't have to go to the main plenary, but then they would repeat some of the key messages in different places at different times. So what you found is that everyone arrived at it's like being at a party. You can't have a group in the corner who are drunk and a group in the corner who are sober. It doesn't really work. You want everyone to arrive at the same place at the same time. And that's the same with messaging. You've almost got the collective, because we're social beings, we need something to talk about. And if we're all talking about the same thing, it's going to reinforce that thing in your mind and the mind of the people you're talking to. So it's about moving the group through in a very structured way so that they all get to the same place at the same time. Like the best parties.
Yay. Okay, what was the kind of the main target of this event? What was the main goal?
Drive business for Cisco customers and Cisco potential customers.
So we were like B2B one.
Yeah. But it's massive. You know, it's I don't know what it is now, but I don't know, around 20,000 visitors.
Wow. And where it was held?
They usually do a couple of years in the same place, so Barcelona, but it's been in Milan and it's been in London. It moves around Europe, Cisco Europe.
Obviously, you were doing big events in Europe. Were there any differences doing them in London or in some other cities? Because obviously London is, the exhibition centers, like they have great ones in Barcelona and everywhere.
I think people ask that stuff all the time, and it's the same. You can have clients say that you can't work in the motor industry until you've worked in the motor industry, or you can't work in IT until you've worked in IT, because we're completely different. But they're not, because they're just people. The same people work in IT as work in the motor, and the same things about people excite them, depress them, get them engaged. It's the same thing, and it's the same with working around the world. And now I'm lucky to have worked virtually everywhere. All across the States, I've done a lot in Russia and the Middle East and Far East. And people are people, they don't want to get it wrong. No one comes to work thinking, do you know what, I'm going to really mess it up today. They don't.
They just do.
Of course they do, but usually it's about, it's like in your relationship. It goes wrong because of communication. It goes wrong because the thing you should have said, you didn't say. I love you, darling. You need to say that regularly, Stas.
Yeah, okay. Mental note.
No, but you just need to make sure that everyone's aligned and everyone gets the communication, because somewhere in the thousands of people that deliver big events, the message doesn't get through, and it's really about that.
I'm gonna edit this moment when I'm thinking. So let's talk about the so-called experiential and brand management and marketing, because obviously Jack Morton, JPJ, they're renowned for this. When I joined the industry, which was about like 3 years ago, the main question was about the ROIs. Is it worth spending that much money on event, or is it better to run Facebook ads? And the discussion is still ongoing.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have like some tangible results you can tell about?
That argument is never going to change, because there is always another thing to spend your money on. It's like, do I buy this car or do I buy that car? It's that conversation. So choice is a good thing. But experiential, and the thing about ROI, it's very distracting. Not that we can't do it, but return on investment doesn't mean money. Everyone thinks return on investment means money, but you don't invest money to get money. You invest money to build relationships, to engage customers. It doesn't matter, your return on investment when you buy a television is entertainment, it's not money, right?
Well, yeah, but in a way...
But return on investment doesn't always have to be money. A business has certain objectives and certain needs. It needs to build its customer base. It needs to make its customers loyal. It needs to align its employees. It needs to maintain its share price. All of those things can be done experientially, but they're not all going to deliver money because money isn't the objective. And it's very important that people understand your investment in an event is to build something you need to set the objectives for, but it doesn't always mean money. And people look for a money payback, but it doesn't work like that. What you're trying to do is take people on a communication journey that embeds them into your company, that embeds them into your company story, that embeds them into your company methodology, where you're not beating them over the head with messages all the time. Sometimes the environment is good enough. Sometimes building a great event environment is good enough to communicate some messages. It can mean we stand for style and class. It means we stand for low cost. It means whatever you're trying to communicate, you can build it in the environment. And then the messages only support that. And getting people to engage their senses, more than one sense, is a good thing because, as we know, it's all about making sure they are engaged and understand what's going on so they can pass it on. That's really it. And the great thing about experiential, whatever it is, whatever division of experiential you think you're in and whatever you're doing, it's really about creating stories, right? That's what experiential is. And the great thing about creating stories is we now have an outlet to put those stories, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, my current favorite, TikTok. Are you not on TikTok?
You're on TikTok now.
Yeah, of course. It's really so. What the marketing director of Twitter says, the best thing for Twitter are events because it gets people talking, and that's it. You can now extend the reach of your event from, let's take Cisco Live. Cisco Live people, 20,000 people at the event, but sort of 4 million watching online or engaging through social. Now that starts to get you to a level of communication that is cost per thousands in the advertising realm. Okay, 20,000 can be quite a lot, but 4 million is not a cost per person. So you've really got to think about what you're trying to do and what your objective is, because experiential gets people you're deeply engaged with a brand or a business. That's really what it's about. You're able, in a land where everyone is shouting to be heard, you can engage deeply in a private conversation. Buy me, buy me, buy me, buy me. Come and see. Because I always used to say that advertising's the friend on the phone that rings you when they want to borrow some money. Yeah. Experiential asks you how you are and makes sure you're okay, because it's a relationship. And relationships are two-way. What do you want? What do I want? It's a two-way thing. Advertising tends to be that way, but experiential is engaging.
How do you get from like entry level to VP of JPJ? Like how is this happening?
There's only one way.
How is this possible?
There's only one way. Produce results.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I say it when I'm guest lecturing with students. The only way to get more money is to do something different, is to add some value. If you look at a company, their finances are based on what they've got today. So if you want a pay rise, that's based on what they've got tomorrow. So you have to do something that's going to earn that money. And I've always been in that mindset if I need money, I need to make money for the company I'm working for. And it doesn't matter whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for a large company. You need to show something, an idea, some growth, a new client. Somehow you need to add some value. We get paid for the job we do, we get rewarded for the value we add. So you've got to add value. That's how you get rewarded. It's simple. And of course, in the event industry, you could be working 10, 12, whatever hours straight at an event, days on end. That's what you get paid for. So you get paid for the job you do, you get rewarded for the value you add. So a new idea, a new process, I saw that, could that work? This customer, that. You've got to think differently. If you really want a career, and of course some people don't want a career, they just want a job. If you really want a career, then you've got to think at every stage, you've got to have a plan.
Right. Recently I was in it was actually an Event Profs live meeting, and they were talking about personal brand.
Yep.
And how it helped. Well,
no, when I did my personal brand, whatever it was, 15, 18 years ago, people thought I was mad. They thought I was crazy. What are you doing?
What were you doing? Because
I was building a personal brand,
I still think,
which is still relevant today.
Yeah.
Well, a personal brand is everything. Whether you externalize it or whether you tell people about it or not, it's worth everything, because you've got one whether you like it or not. People judge you. Companies value you on, your appraisal is a judgment. If you're in a big company and you do a yearly appraisal, that's a judgment. So what I did, whenever that was, 12, 18 years ago, was build a personal brand with my own little logo and my own strap line, and I wrote a daily blog, and I wrote it consistently because I wanted to know what I thought about the event industry, what I thought about experiential, what I thought about customers, what I thought about people. And it's all there in the blog, and that made my brand. And it stood for what I believed in as a person and in business. Obviously your personal thing is something else. And then it led to speaking at events, and I think the first event I ever spoke at, I think it was 20 people who were looking the other way and talking to each other. It makes you grow up very quickly when people aren't listening to you. And then I thought, okay, well, now I need to get better at this. And eventually I ended up talking to 9,000 people in Austin, Texas, in my biggest audience.
When you were like a vice president, would you hire so imagine you have two CVs, which are very good, two people very good on paper, them very good experiences, but one has a strong personal brand and presence.
I've done it.
And then the other one is nowhere to be seen.
I've done it.
Would you give,
Yeah. And senior vice president, but
senior vice president.
But it's there. I've had situations where I've been aware of what someone's brand is, whether they've written a blog or whether they've entered a competition or whether they've got to the final of something. I've known what that person does and have valued that because that's their brand against someone who didn't. And it's profile. It gives you something to talk about, of course. You can say, hi, it's Stas, I'm at a party. Or you can talk about something that's to do with your personal brand and what you stand for and the integrity that you bring to a certain thing. And I know you think you said at senior level, but it sort of doesn't matter. If it's I want the best person in sound, it's this guy, or I want the best person in projection, it's this woman. I want logistics, it's him, or venue search, it's her. If you've got a brand, those names are going to pop into people's heads because you can promote it through your social or through the industry, and eventually it becomes something that people recognize.
On which stage do we actually design the experience? Because doing experiential events myself is often for the event managers, it comes down to just logistics, production, design, planning. So you kind of don't see when you are in the trenches, you don't see the end result before it's delivered. And if you haven't put enough thought to it, it might be too late. So at which stage would you say, if you have an agency team, you have the creatives, you have production, you have planning. At which stage they should sit and think, okay, what will be the customer journey? And you think that
right at the start,
people do this?
Right
enough.
at the start. Yeah. Well, no, certainly the agencies I work with, it's right at the start. First, Because all these things are about the audience. If it's about you, you're doing the wrong thing. You know, if you go on a dates test and all you do is talk about yourself, your date is going to have a terrible time.
Yeah, I know that. I had a couple of studies. I switched the game then, yeah.
But if you're asking questions, what do you think about that? How do you like that? What do you do with that? Your date is going to have a good time. It's about the audience. So understand what the audience wants, what the audience needs, and then real marketing is about finding out what your audience wants and finding a way of giving it to them. Right, honestly and truthfully and transparently. So ask questions through your interrogation process, what that is, whatever that is in your agency or your business. Who is the audience? What do they want? What do they like? What do they don't like? What are their turn-ons? What are their turn-offs in terms of this piece of business? And then build your experience to satisfy those needs. That's really it. It's that simple. And then you build the set and the stage and the whatever. You know, Steven Spielberg doesn't rush into an empty film set and say, what are we going to do, guys? I think we should do a film like it's all in the planning.
Yeah.
Who's this targeted at? What audience is it? Okay, what is that story? How do we tell that story in the most effective and engaging way? Then you've got something. You know, it doesn't matter really what that is as long as it's right for the audience. You can do it in a car park. If your message is strong, you can do it in an empty room. But events change history. Events change lives. Events build business. You know, Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, what was that an event? That was an event.
That's deep.
Band-Aid, that thing was created to solve world hunger, was an event. What did they think of doing? They thought of an event. They didn't think of running an advertising campaign. And what did they think of doing for an event? And this is where I come back to a lot of stuff I talk about is scale of your ambition. You know, what Band-Aid was in the, whenever it was, 1980s, was a massive charity concert. Well, those charity concerts happen every weekend in pubs around the world. Pubs and clubs, we'll put on a band, we'll send the money, we'll send a tin round, you put your money in. But it was the scale of the ambition. What are we going to do? We're going to hire Wembley, we're going to have every band that's ever existed, we're going to get some phones. They created something that hadn't been there before, but it was the scale of the ambition. Because most things have been done before, and it's the scale of your ambition in relationship to what your audience wants that gives you an amazing event. It doesn't matter whether it's a wedding or a corporate event. It's all about the audience. Well, in fact, weddings are about the bride, as we all know. Sorry, brides.
Yeah.
As I said, we have 3 events: Muslim Lifestyle Show, Halal Food Festival, and the Eid Festival, which we're doing about 300,000 people a year now. Eid Festival at Westfield in Shepherd's Bush. We do about 190,000 people turn up for that.
And when is that?
It's April. Eid moves about a bit. It's the end of Ramadan, but it moves about.
Yeah.
But most of my time is tied up with Blueprints, which is a economic development company. We're trying to bring economic justice to 370 million indigenous people in the world. Indigenous people own roughly 30% of the world's assets. It doesn't matter whether it's a gold mine, a forest, a soya bean plantation, coffee, flowers. They own roughly 30% of those. And while we've been ruining the planet, the 370 million indigenous people are responsible for 80% of the world's biodiversity. So the thing that we need to balance our excess, they've been looking after for the last 500 years. But they are the poorest people. They're some of the poorest people on the planet. And what we're seeking to do through Blueprints is to bring economic justice. We've developed a finance model which is called 50-50, where we take investment from corporations and into assets, but we split the profits 50-50 with the indigenous, which the scales of justice balance at 50-50, and we think that's fair because they've been so mistreated over the last 560 years. And the back end of last year, December last year, we bought an event called the World Indigenous Business Forum, which we're now in planning for to launch in November, it's an event that's 10 years old, and we're relaunching it in November this year.
Okay. So what are you going to do different about it? Are you going to change anything about it?
No, it's not going to change. It's just going to involve more people. It's, to use the word you've already used in our warm-up, it's going to be more dynamic. And what we're seeking to do is to involve more people. As I said, there's 370 million indigenous people in 90 countries in the world. So to try and give them a hub to connect with, to help connect them with each other, but also connect with business and finance and retailers. That's really the ambition of the piece.
Right. And if you can just tell us a bit more about how does it work in terms of the investment opportunity, who you're working with, what do they do, and what do they get as an outcome? Like if the company invests with you, or how is the process?
Well, no, what we have a very simple model. It's called ABC.
Okay.
Asset, blueprint, capital. We find an asset. We're working in Colombia and Costa Rica and Uganda, and the indigenous or the government trust us with an asset. Let's call it a forest. So a black teak forest in Costa Rica. Once we've found the asset, then we look for a blueprint. And a blueprint is someone who is delivering that product in a world-class way, because somewhere in the world, someone's doing that better than anyone else. So we look for a black teak blueprint, and we put that developer into the asset. We make them a partnership. That, once we've got A, the asset, and B, the blueprint, it de-risks it as far as investment is concerned, because everyone wants a track record. So then the capital goes into the asset, so A, B, C, asset, blueprint, capital. And once we've got that, we've got a business. And then we develop that business, and with the agreement of all parties that 50% of that profits goes back into another asset in that country. Because 98% of all money leaves, it's called flight capital. People take it out and they take it back to England or America or China. But what we're doing is we're putting it in more indigenous businesses to build more indigenous businesses. Because it's self-supporting, it's how you become economically viable. Economic justice for us balances at 50-50, but if you look at how you build wealth, it's all based on assets. You know yourself that in your wages you spend everything you've got. Everyone does. It almost doesn't matter what you earn. And the only way you build wealth is through the house you own or the business you own. So it's about giving asset value to the indigenous so that they can build some wealth.
Between the time you left your last event company, JPJ, and you started with Blueprints, it was like, what, 8 years?
No, 6 years maybe.
6 years.
Well, I left, I think 4 years after I left GPJ, because I've still got other businesses, but Blueprints was 3 years ago, so 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, my question is, so you built a quite remarkable career in events, but then you didn't limit yourself to the industry. You still, you obviously you run and you have your own events now. You're using your experience, but what was your kind of thought process? And why I'm asking is, like, I'm just curious, like, if people working in events, like, what kind of additional skills they might need if they want, to do something else, or like if they want to do, just to evolve as an event professional.
When I think 4 or 5 years ago, when I was at GPJ, I was speaking at every keynote I could speak at to promote both the industry, the event industry, and GPJ. And I wrote loads of articles. They're all online somewhere. And one of those articles that someone asked me, or one of the questions that turned into an article, was, can an event person become the marketing director or the CMO? And I said yes. My long response, this is my short response, yes. My long response was, of course they can. Event people are multidisciplinary. They have to understand a lot of channels, but the amazing thing about event people is there is a deadline. There's a time. At 12 o'clock on Tuesday, this event is going to happen. At 1 o'clock on Friday, this event is going to happen. You cannot move that deadline. There are very few people in the world that work to that sort of pressure. Very few. And I know we all know that event management is one of the 4 or 5 most stressful jobs you can have, because it's an immovable deadline. There's going to be 10,000 people out there, 20,000 people, 100,000. It's the Olympics, it's going to be 2 billion. That deadline cannot be moved. And having that deadline is such an amazing thing for people in the event industry. I know it's a pain to do, but it provides an amazing strength where you have to do stuff. You can't just talk. It's not a debating society. You have to deliver. Wherever you are, technical, production, planning, logistic, it doesn't matter what department you work in, you've got a deadline, and that makes you strong. And having thought about that for a long while, what then started happening, and you know yourself because you've done it, is people, once you start a company, people ask you how you start a company. What do you start a company?
Yeah.
You get into this startup culture, and then you start going to funding events and networking events where people ask you how you start, how you fund, how you do. And there is no better knowledge than the experience. That's why my company is called The Experience is the Marketing. Having done it, you then asked not only to help people do it, but to help people understand how to do it. And then all of a sudden you are talking to bigger and bigger companies about how you've done it and how they can do it. And that was really the story of Blueprints. Even though it's an impact investment company, economic development company, once you look into it, it's a company that does something, that needs to deliver something. And once you get down to that level, it's all the same. It doesn't matter whether it's an event or whether it's a shoe shop. You need to make something, you need to deliver something, you need to understand the audience. That's events.
Do you think that event professionals, they should get some special training? Because the event degree, it came up very recently, maybe in the last 5-7 years.
The first event degree was 22 years ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. So we've been a proper industry for 22 years, and you can see that the professionalism of the event industry is getting better, and we are doing more. We're doing cleverer, more dynamic things with more people, but it's still people meeting people. You still need that understanding, that insight. But event degrees are everywhere. I think I guest lecture at maybe 5 or 6 universities at the moment. I really don't tell them about events. I tell them about what's going to happen when they leave the classroom.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a big shock. But there's lots of them.
My other question is, because you've been on the both sides, on the agency side and on the client side, working with agencies who are delivering for you. What would be your advice, to the agency for account management, how to handle clients in the best way? Because you've been doing this for years, and then on the other way around, how on the client side to make your life easier working with the agency who delivers for you.
Yeah, I don't think agencies need to understand how to build relationships with clients. They do it all the time. In fact, all you need to do is build a relationship, and we all build relationships all the time. It doesn't matter whether it's your brothers and sisters or your friends and relations. It's a relationship, and how you manage that relationship is a part of you. And agencies build those relationships all the time, and mostly it's about putting the client first, because in any relationship, true love is putting the other person first, right? You know that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're gonna have another channel on relationships.
Everyone makes relationships. You make relationships how you want to make relationships, but mostly, in my relationship certainly, it's about putting the other person first, and it's the same with clients.
I mean, this happens naturally because you obviously need to work with them.
It's naturally.
Where would you say, the fine line? Because clients obviously have vision, and they know how the things want to be done. But then, as an event professional, you are in a way a consultant. So when you should push back and be firm about your...
But all relationships, and without getting too deep, all relationships are based on honesty and integrity, and you stand for the thing you stand for. So if as an agency you believe, the client says to you, we want to go to the moon, and you think, well, that's a possibility, we'll try that, then you say yes. If you think it's definitely not a possibility, you say, I don't think we can do that, but what about this? You've got to be true to yourself, and all the best client relationships are honest and truthful and transparent. The only thing that I have an issue with, and I've had an issue with it for years, is the concept of pitching, especially from a client's perspective. If you're a client and you have a piece of business, let's say it's worth, I don't know, £200,000, and you brief 4 or 5 different agencies, they're all going to be spending 30, 40, 50 grand to win that business.
Yeah.
That's uneconomic. It would be better if clients said, okay, well, I like you, come and let's talk, and then you pitch 1 or 2. Then it's a different relationship, but spending lots of money to pitch for business for me.
That's actually how I thought it's happening before I learned about the 30K pitches, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And I think it's like talking about the evolving topic of sustainability. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And really, in any mature business, the real job of a client is to start reducing suppliers. Really, you want to be dealing with 1 or 2 or 3 maximum in any channel. It doesn't matter whether you're buying nuts and bolts, toilet paper, or advertising. You want to reduce the number of suppliers because it's cost effective. So pitching as we go forward is going to get less and less. So you've got to start building bigger, deeper relationships and show true value. And you'd be better doing that as an agency rather than pitching for work all the time, because it's unsustainable.
But I mean, if you need to win the pitch, like what is your other way? Like, can you enter the tender and then don't spend 30K and do something? If you do something low budget, I mean, then what? They will just say, okay, yeah, thank you, next one.
But that's, so if you enter a race where everyone agrees what the parameters of the race is, we're all going to spend 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, and everyone agrees, everyone understands that if you don't spend that money, you're not going to win anyway, because you're going to look stupid. Because you come in with 1 sheet of paper and they've got a full deck with. What you need to do is you need to be true to your agency. If you've got something really tangible that is going to add value to a client, then you need to portray that in whatever way you need to portray that. But it's a relationship. My old boss, Julian Pullen at Jack Morton, used to say, well, if we don't know who we're pitching to, why are we pitching? And I used to fight against that all the time, but he was right. If you haven't got a relationship, someone else has. If you don't know why you're on the list, you're not going to win. So because someone has got a relationship, nothing dishonest, but we like to work with people we like, and if you build a relationship with someone, in a pitch scenario, if you're pitching against one other agency that is already an incumbent that has done work for years, and they forget something in the pitch, when they leave the room, the client's going to say, no, but they're really good at that. Don't worry, they didn't mention it. But not in a bad way, but they just understand the agency. If you miss it, they don't know whether you do it or not. So it's really about trying to make a level playing field. You've got to build a relationship, and you'd be better spending your pitch money on going to things, hearing clients speak, understanding what their plans are, and building relationships than going after pitches that you're never going to win.
Do you think it's like a realistic scenario?
With pitching?
Yeah, like to win business in this way, rather than...
It depends who you are. It depends who you are. For the bigger agencies where clients know them and seen them, and they want to get a view, then of course it's a realistic investment. But for smaller agencies pitching against big agencies, it's always the same. Big agencies, we're stable, we're solid, we've got a great track record. Smaller agencies, we're flexible, we're going to be there every day, you're the most important customer to us. you can tell those stories, but at the end of it, it's all relationship based. Everything is relationship based. And as I say in one of my keynotes, every purchase we make is emotionally driven. Yes, we have to underpin it with reason. So I buy those shoes because I like the look of them, and they're cheap, they're waterproof, whatever. But every relationship, we're driven by a piece of our brain that's called the amygdala, it's part of the prehistoric brain. It doesn't have language, it doesn't have logic, it only has feelings. It's the bit that said run, fight, kill it, eat it, whatever. Now it drives us in our emotional decision making. And if we see something we like, we're drawn to it. Now, of course, we then, in a business to business environment, you have to say, okay, well, I love these guys, I believe them, okay, and yeah, they've got a great track record, and they've got the right price, and they've got the right creative. You've got a load of things that underpin that, but you're drawn to the people that you're drawn to the thing that you're drawn to. And that's really it. And unless you have a relationship, you're not going to know those things, and you're not going to be able to build those things. Back to relationship. It's all about love stuff.
Yeah, it's all about love.
It is.
So we are filming here in a space which is a home of Event Huddle.
Ministry venues, yeah.
Yeah, really, really cool event. I've been to a couple now. Good crowd, good speakers. Tell us a bit about your involvement, because you are really cheeky and funny moderator.
Thank you. Well, Event Huddle was created 3 or 4 years ago by a very lovely man called Kirk Thomas, who wanted to provide educational material for the event industry. Because just like you, he thought there was some gaps. So the Event Huddle was created back then to create, and it's a panel debate on a hot topic of the day. And we've done everything from education versus experience. Do you need a degree, or do you just need to get out there and do it? We've done women in the event industry, glass ceiling, we've done security, we've done health and safety, we did 3 or 4 on GDPR, we've done 3 or 4 on Brexit when it was a hot topic, and now here at Ministry Venues, it's again found a great home and great support and a great audience. So the last Event Huddle was about mental health with a really great panel, and it's really about awakening the debate in the minds of the audience, and we get, 100 odd every month, but it's about them taking the message back to their own businesses and starting that conversation inside the business. It's just trying to stimulate some understanding, get people thinking about a topic and doing it in their own place. And funnily enough, we're at Confex, Event Huddles at Confex on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
That's great. So I think we're gonna have an opportunity to see you in action, see what's happening. So Kevin, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Guys, I think you find this useful. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm sure we're gonna have Kevin more time, because this is like infinite source of information about what we do. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.